Well, it's just one day before the World Economic Forum on Africa kicks off officially in Kigali, Rwanda. The country has been identified as a beacon for African development when it comes to ICT. It's just 22 years since the country experienced genocide, which resulted in close to 1 million lives being lost in the space of just 100 days. Well, our reporter Nompumelelo Siziba is at the Genocide Memorial Gardens in Kigali. Nompu, Rwanda certainly has come a long way given its recent past, hasn't it?
Thanks very much, Devon. Indeed, it has. I mean, we are in the location of the Memorial Gardens, which is basically a memorial for all the people that died during the genocide. It's estimated that anywhere between 800,000 and 1 million people lost their lives. Some people suspect that it's over 1 million. We're not quite sure. So we're in these gardens, and if I look to my right, you'll see these paved concrete slabs. Here, this is a mass grave, and there are several replicated throughout the gardens. There are some 250,000 people whose remains are here. And if you look behind me, you'll see a word that reads Kwibuka. Kwibuka in the Rwandan language basically means remember. So it's a very somber place to be. And we thought it was a good idea to come here just to say, wow, you know, this terrible thing happened over 22 years ago. But now Rwanda has come so far in economic terms, at least. And it's been identified, as you mentioned, Devon, as a beacon for African development in terms of the developments that it's been making in the ICT space. Rwanda has invested heavily in its broadband infrastructure and is beginning to see massive benefits. About 1 million of its 12 million population have access to the internet. It's certainly doing better than many of the populations in Africa. And so it's seen as a good example, and it's one of the model countries that will be being discussed when the meetings at the World Economic Forum begin tomorrow. So now with me I have a guest who is very much keen to talk about the ICT space. His name is Roland. Sladek. He's from Huawei. It's the Chinese electronics firm. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrongly, but he's going to tell us a little bit about his views on Rwanda and the continent in general. Thank you very much for joining us, Roland. Rwanda is a very good example of an African country doing well in the ICT space. What do you think it's been doing well that other African countries can be replicating?
Well, I think two things which I think quite special here about Rwanda. First of all, sort of the corporate governance, which seems to be quite remarkable. I think I remember last year's ranking by Transparency International ranked Rwanda one of the best countries in Africa, just after Botswana. So I think that's something other African countries can certainly learn from. Ahead of many European countries, by the way, which is quite funny. And a second aspect, I think the government here seems to have an ambition and a vision to develop ICT, and they really see the link between business development and ICT infrastructure. I think the example here in the Kigali Innovation City, which the government tries to build, I think is a good example of that, sort of this breadth of ambition. I think other African leaders and countries can learn from that.
And more broadly speaking, you know, at home, help us to understand why ICT can play such a pivotal role in African economies, given that we do have massive problems with traditional infrastructure like roads and so on.
Well, I think studies from the World Bank, for example, link ICT development, or to be more specific, broadband penetration to GDP growth. I think 10% increase of broadband penetration brings up to 1.4% of GDP growth. So there's a direct link. So the more connected the country is, the better the business, the more creative there will be digital entrepreneurs, etc. So there's a direct link. That's one thing. The second thing is also, I mean, that digital and internet telecommunication opens Africa to the world and opens the world to Africa. So I think that's also very, very, very important. And you can see countries which have been investing heavily in ICT infrastructure tend to be better in terms of economic forms than other countries who have not invested.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Roland. That's all we have time for. Well, that was all from us here in Kigali, Rwanda. We'll have more crossings for you as the day progresses, and of course we'll be covering WEF from tomorrow. It's back to you in studio.
Well, thanks very much, Nompu, in Kigali there, the World Economic Forum starting officially tomorrow.